Hello, my name is Christina Elbar. I'm the author of books such as The Color of God's Eyes and newly released titles of Song on the Devil's Lips. And today we're going to talk about writing POC characters, and that means person of color. Now, I'm coming with you today with this topic because, as I've noticed of it in the writing community, there's some people who are great, capable writers, but some people are just so terrified and paranoid of creating some kind of big racial taboo or cultural taboo. If you're really intimidated and you don't feel like you're up to the task, stop that. Stop that right now, because everyone was so excited when Black Panther came out. It was this huge cultural phenomenon. It was a good movie. It got a lot of jobs for obviously Black director, Black actors, costume designers, and a great phenomenon like the Black Panther wasn't written by Jordan Peele. It wasn't written by Rhonda Shimes. It wasn't written by Maya Angelou. It was written by Stan Lee. Just because you're not Black doesn't mean you can't write a Black character or a great Hispanic character, and so on and so forth. So please do not be too intimidated if you have a great story that you would like to tell. When it comes to writing, I think there's a lot of elements that you want to keep in mind, like your audience and the people who are buying into your product, and the significance of and the repercussions of when it can come out. But first and foremost, I think you really need to be true and honest with yourself and true to your story, and then weigh in those factors after the fact. But first and foremost, what is your story? And get to writing. Now, whether you're watching this because you started writing a POC character and you just want advice about like descriptions and stuff, or you're just absolutely petrified to even try, I'm going to try to hit on all those things. But I'm going to say this. Just remember to don't be overly paranoid, but be smart, be thoughtful, and be brave. Be brave, because you don't want to intimidate yourself out of making a great character, because it's definitely better to build up a great POC character from scratch rather than to create someone after the fact and try to get some kudo points later. So first things first, why are you writing this POC character? And it might seem like an odd question, but is it just... I'm going to assume that you're watching this because this isn't like a throwaway person in the background. If this is someone who you're probably thinking is going to either be the main character or someone pretty significant to the plot. So why are you doing it? Is it because when you think of a lineup of people that you want a lineup that's like culturally diverse, like you're looking at a scale like the Power Rangers? Is it because you're thinking of, you kind of don't want the outrage of not having a person of character in your cast? Do you kind of want like Attaboy? Are you thinking of it because you want your books to be as diverse as possible because it's important to you? Or is because you're thinking about the marketability of having a diverse cast? And if it's any of those reasons, don't feel too bad, because people think about these things all the time. People think about these things when they sell you products like shoes, shorts, purses, when you look at magazines, the TV shows you watch, the people you vote for. I 100% guarantee you that when people have a rally, whether Democrat or Republican, they think about the people who are behind that stage. Don't feel strange because you are thinking along the same lines, that you want to have a broad range of characters, because people are asking for that, and that's why there's such demand, because people think like that. And if you're a non-white American, your race is an essential part of your identity. That is a statistical fact. This isn't something you particularly have to dwell on, but I think it's important that you kind of know going in. In the Light Book Awakening, one of my characters is a POC character, but she's also albino. And one of the reasons why I decided to make and have an albino character is because I really liked, I guess, the visual when I was thinking about it. I wrote this originally as a script for an anime type, American type anime show, kind of like Avatar: The Last Airbender. That's why when people read it, they're like, oh, it reads like an anime. It sure does. But then when I started doing some more research about people who are albino, I realized that there's such a stigma in film, or at least people feel like there is, when a lot of people who are albino are portrayed as villains. And I was just so glad to be able to contribute and write a character who is beautiful and strong and good and really one of the main forces in the book. And to have that kind of representation there really became like a bigger life to me. So I was glad to create that character, and I'm glad that she plays such a huge part in my story. Another question you might want to ask is, how much is your character's race going to define and move along the plot? Like, how essential is it? Now, when you think of a character like Lisa Turtle from Saved by the Bell, she was actually originally supposed to be a Jewish girl, but Lark did such an amazing job at her audition that when she walked in, they said, oh my gosh, this girl is Lisa Turtle, and they gave the role to her. And there wasn't really any storylines that were essential to her ethnicity. Now, she was a huge cultural icon, but there was never some kind of like after school racial episode or some kind of big divide. At least that was obvious in the show that dealt with her race. Contrast that with someone like Bonnie from the Vampire Diaries, who in the book originally is a white redhead girl with like druid backgrounds. In the TV show, I thought it made a lot of sense because they made the Salvatores, instead of like having Italian roots, and they were created during the Civil War period, and so their backgrounds are tied to Bonnie's ancestors, and so really Bonnie's ethnic background had much more to do with her family history, and there wasn't, like, similar to what I said with Lisa Turtle, there was never really much of an centric episode when Bonnie's race really played a big role. There's a huge difference between someone like Lisa Turtle and Bonnie Bennett to Luke Cage. And Luke Cage, you would need to know quite a bit of things to get those right, all the dynamics right. I mean, not just like cultural history, but also the dynamics of Harlem, the dynamics of interracial politics, with not just dealing with racism, but black on black relationships. A lot of people maybe outside of the races don't know about the inner workings and the divides that there can be within communities. Do you have the guts to write a scene when Luke Cage was going off about it's so hard to be a black man? And do you have the guts to write a character like Rosario Dawson's character, who pushed back and said, oh, poor you're not the only people who suffered? And it's like, oh snap, she's going in on him. Like, do you have like the knowledge to write something that feels that authentic? So once you kind of know and have an idea of how much the race is going to play a crucial part of the story, I think that's where you can really kind of start to lay out where you need to go, how much you need to learn, how much you need to research, and how serious you really need to take things. So let's talk about character descriptions. Now, first of all, if you want people to know that your character is a POC character, I think you should just tell us. You should just flat out say it. You can be subtle if you want to, and subtle is good if there's enough subtle to paint the picture. But if you want people to know, I think you should just tell us, especially if you want us to know, because people will paint crazy kind of pictures. Quick story. I was in high school, and as I mentioned, I was one of the few people of my kind there. And we were reading a story, and it was a poem, and it was just a girl describing herself. And our task was to kind of pick out everything we knew by how she described herself. I think she might have described things in her room. And as we were picking everything out, we said everything about her personality that we could dictate. There was nothing to like guess her skin color at all. And I noticed that it said that she had ashy knees. And I just knew that someone was going to say something. And so someone raised their hand, this guy, and he's like, I think she's black. And mind you, having ashy knees was the only thing that I guess that they could weave that theory together. And my teacher was just dumbfounded, and I'm pretty sure I was the only black person in the class. And I'm like, that does not mean you're black just because you have ashy knees. Like other people don't get ashy, it just means you have dry skin. And so there was quite a few people who were like pushing on it, and we were just, and my teacher was horrified. She's like, guys, are we stereotyping? And so anyway, the moral of that story is that some people can come to really bad conclusions, and sometimes you just need to beat them over the head with facts. And that was not a correct assumption at all. So, you know, just know what kind of people you're dealing with. Don't think just because that you say a character is Cuban that the Cuban that you're thinking about is the Cuban that's in everybody else's head. You might be thinking of like a dark-skinned Cuban person because you have a friend who's Cuban and they are dark. I'm thinking about Ricky Ricardo's complexion. So if you want people to get a specific kind of description in their head about how someone looks, just tell us what they look like. You cannot say things like white and black and assume that we know what shade you're talking about. If you just say black, we don't know if you mean the Rock Dwayne Johnson or if you're talking about Idris Elba. We don't know. If you say white, I don't know if you mean Kristen Stewart or if you mean Donald Trump. Like, you have to be more specific. And even when you say something like light skin, dark skin, what? Like, are you a light-skinned black person? Are you a dark-skinned white person because you've been out in the sun too long? Get a little bit more. If that's vague enough, it's fine for you. Then that's okay. If that's just the kind of picture you want. Because some people don't want to paint very specific characters because they want people's imaginations to fill in the blanks. I'm assuming you're still watching to this point because you want to make some kind of statement about your character and them being a person of color. So if you want us to kind of have a generalization of what kind of shade they are, just tell us what it is. Are they beige? Do they have yellow or reddish undertones? Are they olive? Are they mocha? Are they chocolate? Are they peach? Are they pinkish? Are they milky white? Tell us these things. Now, some people have a problem with using food to describe people. I have thoughts about that. I disagree with some reasons and agree with some other ones. I'm not gonna get too much into this video because it's kind of quite long already. You can go to my website, ninjadustpublishing.com, to kind of see my general thoughts about it. However, I will say that you do run into danger if you use things that everyone else uses, because I mean, it's generic. Everyone is using it, so it's very familiar. You don't want to sound like everybody else. But the reason why everyone uses it is because it's so easily identifiable. It's not just something that people use for people of color, but there are other things in nature that you can use. I mean, you can look at, like, maybe someone's is beautiful dark skin with kind of maybe like angular bone structure, maybe, and they're kind of like a cool, hardcore kind of, you know, sassy character. Maybe you want to describe them like obsidian, you know, make that kind of comparison, because I think that gives you like a really cool visual, plus maybe it kind of tells you something about maybe their sharper personality. So I mean you can really use your descriptions to kind of not just describe, but to also tell you maybe a little bit about that person and maybe the relationship that maybe the narrator has to the person that they're describing. How you describe someone matters. When you describe them, I think, can matter and tell a lot about a story. Like if you said something like Johnny's family was one of the few, you know, black people in the community, that doesn't say a lot about Johnny that you can assume, but that says quite a bit about the town. Not that they're racist or anything, I'm not trying to make that assumption, but it does say that it is maybe like an isolated town. Maybe it's more rural. And you start kind of weaving in details. So you just want to be thoughtful about how you introduce people. There's some people who are going to just be absolutely hard to please. I wrote one fan fiction some years back when I was in middle school about, I think it was middle school, and it was an Inuyasha fanfic, and I had an Inuyasha counterpart who was half black. And when Kagome finally realized, because he wasn't too much darker than Inuyasha, she realized that he had a wider nose. Now, someone just threw a fit in my comment section, and like I went back and forth with them a little bit on the DM, or I can't even remember what it's called, in the messenger, and you know, I let them know, like, I am black. Like, I like my nose. It's just a fact. The reason when I start kind of being more descriptive with characters in my books is because I have a lot of books, and I don't want one character to look too much like the other. I don't want people to feel like I'm just reproducing like the same person over and over and over again, especially with guys. So then I get kind of more into specific territory, especially because I still want them to be handsome. So that's when I kind of get more detailed into the faces. But some people kind of like to leave it more vague. And you can be vague, you can be kind of blunt about it, but just don't be insensitive about it. And when I think about characters, I think about how I want them to, how they would look in a live action situation, how they would look in a cartoon, how they would look on a poster. And you know, people make comic books, you know, they sprinkle in green person, blue person, black person, and you know, they think about a variation of colors. That's why animes, people have different hair colors and different hairstyles because they're trying to be, you know, visually diverse. So I think, so those are things I keep in mind. Maybe you want to keep in mind as you think about how you're going to expand farther than your book, because who doesn't want to have an adaptation one day? You can always cross your fingers and hope. There are different features that are specific to different races. Like, my hair is pretty thick, but white people do have thick hair, but my texture is different than other textures. You can research those things to kind of, you can Google different, you know, races and hair, and you don't have to describe it in like a 3-page description of someone's looks. It can just be like, you know, something while they're doing their hair, you know, that they describe that something like that is happening. You can weave in these descriptions into things that are going on in the plot. These can go beyond skin color and eye shape, nose shape, and etc. You want to step away from like stereotypes unless the stereotypes is something that you want to play with and you really want to dive deep into. I had a book called Superficial, which isn't released yet, but it was the first book I wrote, and it was really about dealing with different kind of stereotypes. And so I had a ghetto black girl in a white school who was kind of based off of my sister Sabrina, and the theme of the book was really, there's more to people than what you think. So there was a lot more than the perception that the narrator had that she kind of had to figure out later. But you want to be smart. I'm assuming you're to this point, you're writing a book, I'm assuming you have some common sense. And if you ever feel like you need some help, you can reach out. You can reach out to people, to your friends, your family, to nice writing community members on Twitter. You can always message me at @NinjaDeskPub, or, you know, contact me through my website, whatever. I don't mind answering questions. I was really, really the question girl at my school, at my high school. I'd rather people ask than just go on through life assuming and then be horribly insensitive, especially to the wrong people, and then maybe get into a really bad situation. So I don't mind answering questions if you have questions, and I'm sure there's other people who wouldn't mind either. But in closing, I want to say, be smart, be thoughtful, and be true to your story, and do not be afraid to reach out to people who genuinely want to help you. To be insensitive is bad, but you really don't want a case where you write something that does not feel authentic. If you're still terrified to write this character, caution is good, but I'm gonna tell you, you cannot please everybody. Ancestry put out a commercial some time ago with a white man who's running away with a slave that he apparently was in love with, and there was such huge outrage that they had to take it down. And I was concerned about that because I'm like, this is like my literal history, except the genders were flipped, and I had, you know, a white woman who ran away with one of her father's slaves, and I decided to incorporate that into one of my stories, The Color of God's Eyes, and I flipped the genders. And but some people are always going to be offended by something, and you just have to be true to your story and write and produce something that's has really good content, and at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you're proud of what you have, and part of being proud of what you have is going to be creating an authentic experience. So make sure that you do the research, make sure you talk to people, and make sure that you be smart, you be thoughtful, and you be brave, and you make the next freaking Black Panther. And if you like this video, you can click the like button, you can comment, leave questions in the comment sections, you can follow me on Twitter at NinjaDustPub, follow me on Facebook at NinjaDustPublishing, or you can go to NinjaDustPublishing.com where all these social media links are available. You can follow me on Amazon, and make sure that you pick up The Color of God's Eyes and also the Song on the Devil's Lips and many of my other titles. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll be back soon.